Good day everyone, we are the Group 1 and I am your first reporter for today. My name is Jhaymaica, a Psychology 2A student, and our topic is about the impact of the teaching of psychology in the Philippines. Psikolohiyang Pilipino or the Filipino psychology refers to the psychology born out of the experience, thought, and orientation of the Filipinos based on the full use of Filipino culture and language. The approach is one of the indigenization from within, whereby theoretical framework and methodology emerge from the experiences of the people from the indigenous culture. It is based on assessing historical and social-cultural realities, understanding the local language, and revealing Filipino characteristics and explaining them through the eyes of the native Filipino. So, Psikolohiyang Pilipino is the study from within, which means that it has something to do with the people within the country, the culture within the country, the behavior of the people within the country, as long as it has something to do with the Filipino people or the Philippines. So, Psikolohiyang Pilipino is the study from within, which means that it has something to do with the people within the country, the culture within the country, the behavior of the people within the country, as long as it has something to do with the Filipino people or the Philippines. Thus, using American categories and standards, the native Filipino invariably suffers from the comparison in subtle attempts to put forward Western behavior and pattern as models for the Filipino. This disenchantment continued as Filipinos struggled to assert their national and cultural identity. In the 1960s, many Filipino intellectuals and scholars were already sensitive both to the inadequacies as well as the unfairness of the Western-oriented approaches to psychology. Through the years, there was an awakening, a realization by Asian psychologists that Western concepts and theories were irrelevant and inapplicable when applied in the Asian context. They began to question the appropriateness of letting Western social scientists describe and predict Asian behavior without consideration for the differences between the Asian and Western culture. Thus was born a need for an Asian psychology, a psychology arising from one's own experiences. With it, there was a movement as well by Filipino psychologists of the need to have their own identity. Before Psikolohiyang Pilipino, we used the Western methodology and all, which lead to misunderstanding that because in the first place we have different culture from the Western people, we have different beliefs from them, and secondly we have different behavior from them. That's why Filipino psychologists came up with the idea that we Filipino people should have something nga dapat halingid siya sa aton nga idea for us to understand our own cultures, our own behavior, and our own selves. Psychology as an academic discipline in the Philippines started in the early 1900s, while the establishment of the first department of the psychology in the Philippines started in 1926, when the U.S. colonized the country. The psychology of teaching and learning helps us understand the social, emotional, and cognitive processes that constitute learning throughout the lifespan. Psychologists working in the field of education study how people learn and retain knowledge. They apply psychological science to improve the learning process and promote educational success for all students. Psychologists working in the field of education are focused on identifying and studying learning methods to better understand how people absorb and retain new information. Educational psychologists apply theories of human development to understand individual learning and inform instructional process, while interaction with teachers and students in school settings is an important part of their work. It isn't only the facet of the job. Learning is a lifelong endeavor. People don't only learn at school, they learn at work, in social situations, and even doing simple tasks like household chores or running errands. Psychologists working in this subfield examine how people learn in a variety of settings to identify approaches and strategies to make learning more effective. Educational psychologists doesn't only give solution to a child who are having hard time when it comes to learning, but they also help those children or those students who are in special needs. They also make us understand different strategies when it comes to learning. They also give light to why a child is good at something and why he is not that good at that area.